Hello again, viewers, and greetings, fellow space travelers. This is Thorn of Night, and welcome to part 7 of my how-to guide for RotaryCraft. And today I'm going to be covering some of the stuff involved with power transmission, which can be found starting on page 6 and ending on page 7. I may split this subdivision, or this chapter, rather, into two different episodes. It depends on how much time I've got left after I finish covering the flywheels down there. But what this is going to be covering is how to get the power that you are generating, which I went over in the last few episodes, uh, from one place to another. Because being able to generate power is nice and all, but if you can't get it to the machines that you want to run, it serves no real good purpose. So, the first basic thing that you're going to be messing with are these things called shafts, and the recipes for them really quickly. The wood one is just planks and a stick. The stone one is stone slabs and a stone rod, which is just smooth stone. And then the rest use a mount and some sort of shaft unit, which I've gone over before, but I will go ahead and demonstrate the steel, diamonds, and finally the bedrock, which is a regular steel surrounded by bedrock dust, which you will have to get much later in working with RotaryCraft. Now, what this device and its counterparts is what its purpose is to just directly move the power from one place to another. You don't lose any torque, you don't lose any speed, no power loss. It doesn't need to be lubricated. All it does is just transmit the power from one place to another completely losslessly. However, the different stages do have different tolerance levels. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on just to show you. It is putting out 278 newton meters of torque and 3577 radians per second of speed, and it is the same input and output. Both are equal, and that is what we're going for: lossless power transportation. Oh, those, by the way, are the absolute maximum tolerances for this. If you put in too much speed, it'll explode. If you put in too much torque, it'll go pop. The actual shaft in there will go pop, making you have to reassemble your device. But that's the wood one. The stone one has some higher tolerances. There's the speed and torque tolerances there. Just to show you, same input and output. Then we move on to the steel. Here are the tolerances for that, the absolute maximums it can withstand. Oh, and I should mention, in the book here on page, well, I guess that's page 2, okay. It does have the information for both of the torque and the speed maximums, so you can reference that yourself. But I just wanted to demonstrate them functioning. As you can see, they work just fine at those speeds. Then we have the diamond, which these are the numbers for that, for the absolute maximums. Getting to this is going to take you a good long time, so it's a pretty useful item to transmit tons of power if you need to for whatever reason. But there we go. 66,000 gigawatts. And then finally the bedrock, which is infinite. It will withstand any amounts of torque, any amounts of speed, and just put it out losslessly. You don't have to worry about it going boom or pop or anything like that. It is the ideal candidate, but it is very hard to get to early on. And just a quick demonstration of the power transmission here. Going from one variety to the next, it doesn't lose any of its oomph. Still 994406 kilowatts on the input and the output. Now, these things can also be placed vertically, so you can power upwards, and that's just a matter of looking down when you place it. And you can do that with all of the shafts there. And this is just a bevel gear, which I will get to shortly, but as you can see, 994406, 994406, the exact same as the original input down here. So you can use these to transmit lots of power. Just be careful not to go over their maximums. I believe I demonstrated what happens in the first episode when you put too much juice into the shafts. Alright, had a little bit of a cut there. Sorry about if that jarred anyone. I realized I left out some signs, so I went ahead and put those in place. But anyway, the next thing to cover here are called gearboxes, and there are 20 of them, but don't let that be too daunting. It is raining, how wonderful. There are 5 different, I guess flavors is a good enough word for it. Wood, stone, steel, diamond, and bedrock. And those are the scales of them. What they do is, well, for one thing, they have a GUI, and they can either change the ratio coming into them to a different output by way of either torque, or if you shift right click on them, speed. And there are different maximums for both settings. And ultimately what they do is, if you have an input speed of, say, the maximum for the torque ratio here, 3577 radians per second for the speed and 17 for the torque. This one is a 2-to-1 gear. What it does is it cuts the speed in half and doubles the torque. However, as you can see here, this thing is catching on fire, and I believe it may have actually broken. Yep, it broke. And the reason for that is they need to be lubricated. So let's go ahead and turn on some lubricant here. And get out this guy. Put him in, and you can see, whoops, it automatically fills up with the lubricant. The wood ones hold 3 buckets of lubricant each. And now you can see that this is not diminishing. Nothing is catching on fire, or for the later ones, sparking or making clunking noises, but cuts the speed in half and doubles the torque. The other way around, for the other setting, which I have the maximums here for the speed and the torque settings, it cuts the torque in half and doubles the speed. There is a very minimal loss of power. So as you can see here, 60,809 kilowatts turns into 60,792 kilowatts. And it's minimal, very minimal for all of them. But there are 4 different types of each flavor: 2-to-1, 4-to-1, 8-to-1, and 16-to-1. The recipes for the wood ones use planks and the gear units, which I went over in, I believe, episode 1 of this guide. But it just uses some gears and some sticks, and those are the recipes for the gears there. The 4-to-1 uses the 4-gear ratio unit. The 8-to-1 uses the 8, and likewise with the 16, it uses the 16. Now, if you exceed either the speed or torque for either setting, for the speed or for the torque ratio, which is that, or the speed ratio, which is that, it will explode. Not too terribly violently. It doesn't break neighboring blocks or anything like that, but it will explode. It'll go pop. And when it does, the wood ones will give you sawdust. But I will actually go ahead and demonstrate that here. Let me go ahead and turn this off. I'm going to leave it set to the settings for the torque ratio, but I'm going to change it over to speed, as you can see here. And if I do that, let me go ahead and grab a copy of it. Goes boom, gives me some sawdust. So in order to prevent that, let's go ahead and change the ratio here, or the speed here, to 1788 as the absolute maximum for that setting, and 278. And remember to shut things off when you are setting up your ratios and whatnot. So let's change that to the speed, double check here. And here we go. Now it doesn't explode, works just fine. Very close on the power output there, but as you can see, it basically cuts the torque in half and doubles the speed. Unfortunately I don't have the exact measurement. Well, hold on, maybe. Let's see here. 3,768 radians per second. Let's see here. Bringing up my calculator. 1788 times 2. Whoops. That's not what I wanted to press. I seem to be hitting the wrong button somewhere. 1788 times 2 equals. There we go. So that comes to 3576. And this guy here is 3576. Okay. So I guess for the speed setting, it doesn't lose any power. That's good to know. I did not actually take that into account. Anyway, that's the wood one. Similarly, the stone one has two different settings, speed and torque. These are the maximums for the torque, and those are the maximums for the speed there. And it also requires lubricant. It can hold 8 buckets, but you just have to have some in there. It'll go through it, but it doesn't go through all 8 really quickly. It can simply hold 8. And I should mention you can just put buckets in here if you want, but I have this set to the torque changeover, and as you can see, it doubles the torque, cuts the speed in half, with a little bit of diminishment of power, not much. I think that's actually because of rounding down for cutting the speed in half. But the recipes for these, instead of planks, you'll be using stone slabs and the equivalent stone gear, and that's the same setup for all of them. They do require the work table to make, so you can't just craft them in a regular crafting table. And when these guys explode, they will give you gravel. Moving on to the steel one. These are the torque setting maximums, and these are the speed setting maximums there. And I have it set to the torque right now. And as you can see, once again, a very minimal power loss there. These will use the mounts, which I went over before. I'll go ahead and show you the recipe for that. Base panel and some steel ingots. And the steel gear units, same sort of setup. Whoops. Wrong button. Same sort of setup for the gears for those. And when they explode, I should mention they will give you HSLA steel scrap. They do also require lubricant and hold 24 buckets, and that's the same for all 4 of them. And that is the steel. Moving on to the diamond. Similarly, 4 different types. Whoops, I guess it would help if I put you in here. 4 different types, same sort of recipe. It uses the mount once again, and this time the diamond gear, same sort of setup as I went through before. When they explode, they will give you diamonds. And these are the maximums for the torque setting and for the speed setting there. And as you can see, I have it set for torque. And there it says the torque there. Once again, very minimal power loss. Actually, it's almost negligible at this amount of power, which really does lead me to believe it's just a rounding issue when it comes to the speed. But that is the diamond one. One small difference here, I should mention, it only holds one bucket of lubricant. However, it goes through the lubricant very slowly. I could probably sit here for 10 minutes and watch, and it won't even use a mill bucket. It is very, very, very gradual, and you don't really have to babysit this too much. But it does cost diamonds to make, so there's the trade-off. And then finally, the bedrock. Notice how it says no maximum. That's the same for the speed. I didn't even bother putting a sign down. You can just crank it all the way up to maximum, and it will just grind along, no problem. You can hook up a lubricant source to it, but it doesn't need it. As you can see, it's not even filling with lubricant there. No beige colored fluid in the basin there. 0 buckets of lubricant. That is as much as it holds. I could even grab a bucket of lubricant. Let's see here. And put it in. Nothing. It doesn't even fill it up because it doesn't require it. It is made of bedrock and awesome. Doesn't explode, so no scrap or anything like that. No bedrock dust. Similarly, the recipes use a mount and the various bedrock gear units that I went over in the previous, are in, I believe, episode 1. Uses the shaft units for those, which is bedrock dust in order to make it. So you do have to get a little bit farther along in RotaryCraft in order to get this going. But once you do, bedrock is definitely your objective there. Alright, next up we have this thing called the Bevel Gears. And the recipe for that there is some base panels, steel ingot, some shaft units, and a steel gear. And that will get you 4 of these bevel gears. It does have to be crafted in the work table. Just like pretty much everything else in this mod except the work table itself and I think the blast furnace. But what this guy does is, you may have seen me use this in a few of the other episodes of this guide. It will translate power to a different angle. It doesn't lose power and it has no maximum thresholds. But basically what it does is it helps you turn 90 degrees with your power usage. I even demonstrated that over there on the shafts. And right now I have this thing putting out 500 and 500. And it is going nowhere. The reason for that is if you look at it with an angular transducer or a screwdriver, I'll use a screwdriver, there are 8 pieces of information that you need to keep track of. 2 are the green square and the red square. Green is the input and red is the output. The other 6 are 6 different colors. For instance, on the south side here you can see black. On the west side you can see orange, and there's a little line coming out for each of those. Underneath is light blue. And then to the east here is this purple. And then finally, the last 2 over here is yellow off to the north, and then straight up is the blue, the regular blue. Now, the way this works is you need to figure out the 2 directions where you have power going. And we want, for this one, we want the power to come in from the yellow and go out through the purple. So click on yellow for input side, purple for output side, and it will turn itself around even visually. And now you can see that these are linking up, and here we have it translating the power around the corner. Exactly the same input and output. There's no loss. It doesn't need to be lubricated or anything like that. You just have to know which sides are which. So it is important to note that the light blue is the bottom. It might be hard to see sometimes because more than likely you're probably going to be putting it on things and then you can't see the bottom. But that is the Bevel Gears. Moving on to this thing called the shaft junction. Now the shaft junction has a couple different settings. First off, I will show you the recipe. You can only access the GUI in one of the functions. And it is made by using base panels, shaft units, steel ingots, and a steel gear. And what this guy does is he takes some power coming in from... I don't have a lever. Oh, yes, I do. Some power coming in from one side or another and put it through. And if I get out the angular transducer here, you can see that there are 2 green inputs and 1 red. And this is the merging power setting. You can see that up at the top. And it is currently receiving 100 newton meters of torque and 100 radians per second of speed, and it is outputting that. So let's come over here and turn this one on. Same amount of juice, and now same speed, but this time it is adding the torque together to increase the power that way. And it is very important on the merging mode that you have the radians per second, the speed, the same. If I change the torque, say, to 150, it just changes that there to the combined torque. However, if I change it just even 1 off, you'll get grindy noises and sparking. It doesn't need to be lubricated and it won't go boom, but it won't efficiently transmit the power. It has to be set to the same speed. And once you get that at the same speed, it will smoothly combine the powers together to get a higher output. The other mode for this, if I smash this with the angular transducer, you can see that there is 1 output and there are 2, or 1 input and there are 2 outputs. And also, there is a setting here for how you want the power to be split. So let's go ahead and turn this on. And right now, I have it set to the 1-to-1. I am putting out 100 newton meters of torque and 100 radians per second of speed. And it is splitting it 50 units of torque there, 50 units of torque. So let's up this to a 3-to-1 ratio. 75 one direction, 75 the other. Or 1-to-3 ratio, or I'm sorry, 75 1, 25 the other. And this one is 25 this direction and 75 the other. The way you can tell which directions they are going is inline means in the direction that the power is going, and the bend means the other direction. So if I want it to go to the bend, more power to the bend, it will go that way. If I want more power to go to the inline, it will go this way. And the different ratios are 1 less than the binary unit. So it divides it into some binary amount. So 32 here, and 16, and 8, and 4. And then it says 1 of it goes this way, and 3 of it goes the other way. Or 1 this way, 31 the other direction. So, for instance, this, I have now got 3 newton meters, and then 96 newton meters. And it does do some rounding, so there is some loss if you don't have an exact number there. But this is a great way to take one source of power and divide its torque output in different directions. It will keep the same speed, so if I change this to, say, 1,000... Come on. Oh, no, I did that in the wrong spot. 1000. It keeps the exact same speed on all of them, so you don't have to worry about sparks or anything. But you do have to do a little bit of division in order to figure out what power you want to go where. And keep in mind, bend versus inline. But that is the shaft junction. Moving on to this next thing here. It is called the clutch. Whoops. And the clutch does not have a GUI, so let's go ahead and show you what it says in the book. Clutch is found right here. It uses a mount and a shaft unit, or you can use a steel shaft, which is that same recipe there, and a redstone. It has no maximum tolerances, and all it does is act as a powered toggle. I have 100 torque and 100 speed going in, and there's nothing going out, but as soon as I apply a redstone current to it of any amount, it transmits the power through, and this works for any amount of power or speed. So let's make these 500, 500, 500. There we go, same thing. But I could see how it could be useful in maybe in some circumstances, but if I'm generating power, because this power, if it's going somewhere, it just goes, and it's wasted if it's not being used up or stored somehow. So I don't really see, me personally, any use for the clutch. Maybe I will find one, but I don't foresee needing it. But it serves its purpose. You can turn on the power transmission, turn it on and off. Anyway, moving on to the next thing. This guy, I've been using it all over the place, this whole guide so far. It is called the Dynamometer. And the Dynamometer does not have a GUI. The recipe for it is a shaft unit, an ender pearl, a mount, and a screen, which the screen is just simply the circuit board, some steel, and a glass pane. Real quick, there's the circuit board. You can use either gold or electrum. Well, actually, gold and ender pearl versus electrum and copper. The difference is this one, the cheaper recipe will get you one, and the gold and ender pearl will get you two. But what this does is, without exploding or needing any maintenance, it just tells you what's going through it. And it can, if you have a bunch of resources, say a bunch of electrum for some reason, and a bunch of copper and other resources, it can be used as a shaft, I suppose, but it's an expensive shaft. But you don't have to worry about it going boom. There is no maximum on it, so I guess it could be cheaper than waiting until you get bedrock. But all it does is display what's coming in, and it puts that exact amount, no loss, to the output. And I've demonstrated its usage a whole bunch of times. So there you go, the dynamometer. And let me clear out this excess stuff. And this guy, go ahead and move this up here. And I think I just shot myself in the foot by deleting this. There we go. This next thing is called the Flywheel. Now, the book has some information on it. It has some information on all of these. But there are some limits to these flywheels, and it says so right here on page 2. There are 4 different types of flywheels: wood, stone, iron, and gold. Excuse me. And these numbers here, if you go beyond their limits, these flywheels will go boom. And the way these things are crafted, you need a mount, and you need one of either wood flywheel core, stone flywheel core, iron, or gold. And the recipe for the cores are planks around steel, stone around the steel gear, iron or just simply gold around the steel gear. And what these do is, let me go ahead and get these things started really quick so you can understand them. First off, they have a noise. A little grindy noise at first, but once they get going, it kind of peters out a little bit. It's not a constant grind. Now, as you can see here, the amount of power I have going into it is not the amount that's coming out. Yet. Yet being the key word. Once it gets up to full oomph, it will keep that power going. And the purpose behind these things are to basically make it so that if you have to, for some reason, shut off power or disconnect it from your system, you need these parts for something else, you can get some power going here and then connect some machines to the output, and these will keep running for a good long while. It takes quite an amount of time for them to run out of juice. So basically it's just spinning them up and using their weight to store power long term. Now, the wood one takes forever to get up to speed. And this is the maximum amount that it can take, and it does have a minimum amount of torque in order to get going. But for the wood, that's the maximum. Beyond that, this will go boom in a very colorful fashion. It won't really break all that much stuff around it, but it will go boom. And I think it actually hurts. I haven't tested it for the pain. Moving on to the stone one, similar fashion. 32, the maximum is 128, and there's the maximum speed, and it's still climbing. Next one is the steel one. Here's the range for the torque, minimum to maximum, and there's the maximum speed for radians per second. This guy is still climbing. And then finally the gold one. Notice that it is at its maximum already. The gold one takes the least amount of time and the least amount of effort to get up to its max. There's its torque ranges. It doesn't really care about anything under 1024, but it will go boom at 4097. And the speed, the maximum speed for it is 1410, and anything faster than that, it'll explode. Now, I'm going to go ahead and shut this off. And you can see this is still putting out power. As a matter of fact, it's still putting out its maximum amount of power, and it will do so for some time. And what you can do, let me come over here and grab something. I'll grab the grinder, why not? Excuse me, sorry about that. If I hook this guy up to it, once it has an output, it will start using some of its oomph. And you can take the output away and it will stop using the juice in it. But it will run this for quite some time. You can see that it's going down very slowly, very slowly. As a matter of fact, if I turn this back on, it's already back up to maximum again. Hard to get that on screen. There we go. You can barely see it. Maximum. Really quick. So basically, once you get these going, all it takes is a little bit of nudge to keep them at the maximum. They can keep the machines they're hooked to running for a very long amount of time. So that is the flywheel. And that is going to be it for this episode too. And I don't want these things to last too terribly long each. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, and I'll pick up with the rest of the power transfer devices with the next video. So, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to leave a message in the comments section below. I'll do my best to get back to you as quick as I can. If you like this video and you like what I'm doing here, please feel free to give a like. I do appreciate that. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you know when my future stuff comes out. But I'm going to go ahead and get ready for the next part and get that going. So I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you once again for watching. This is Thorn of Night, and I will talk to you later.